First of all, a very warm welcome. Good evening to all the doctors who have joined us today. This is going to be a discussion wherein we will be discussing updates that we have brought in for gynecologists, right? And then we will also be looking at how these updates will reflect on our own EMR modules, right? And then we will also be discussing what is the vision that HealthPlix has with respect to upcoming gynae features. Version 1 of the gynecology module that we have today, right? And next couple of slides we will be discussing upon what are those features that we have tried to bring in. Specialty specific EMR updates for gynecologists, and we will quickly hop on to the very first update that we have brought in, right? So after speaking to a lot of gynecologists earlier, we found out that blood group is something that is very, very critical for any gynecologist, for a gynecologist or for obstetrics doctor who are taking care of ANC patient. Blood group is very, very important for them for making decisions, right? A lot of times what we understood is if the patient is Rh negative, that automatically categorize the patient as a high risk patient, and this is the kind of information that a gynecologist cannot avoid or cannot miss a scene, right? And that's where what we have done is that today, as and when we are adding the patient or the gynecologist who have joined us today, if you are working on the EMR along with your front desk, we have a dedicated blood group field on the patient registration screen itself, right? Now, if we put patient's name, age, phone number, and if we enter the blood group of the patient and add the patient on the visit pad while we are writing the prescription, the blood group will be visible alongside the patient's name, right? So that's where if an Rh negative blood group patient cannot be missed, right? This data point cannot be missed. And this is something that we have brought in as the very first update, right? So the patient is A negative, and you can clearly see alongside patient's name, patient's blood group, and her phone number will be there up front. The second update that we have brought in is that again, LMP is one of the most indispensable data point in every gynae practice, right? We are not just talking about ops patient, even general patients or fertility patients. LMP stands to be very indispensable, integral data point, right? And that's where what we have done, that we have brought in a dedicated LMP field on the visit pad, wherein LMP date can be easily picked from the date picker down below, right? So the doctors can easily go back, or let's say LMP is in the previous month, they can click here and they can select the LMP date, right? So that is the second update that we have brought in. But what is more important here is that now the doctors do not need to worry, right? The EDD also gets calculated automatically, right? So as and when the doctor is picking an LMP date and they click on, and then they click on EDD, the date picker drop down that comes up, the particular EDD dates get highlighted there. Now, the fourth major thing that we have brought in today is that a lot of gynecologists who are using HealthPlix today, they were asking for a field where they can write examination findings, or they are doing certain scans, they want to write those findings in a single line, right? So that's where what we have done is we have brought in a dedicated field for entering USG findings. And the best part here is that the doctors will also have the provision to create templates, right? So for example, certain scan, I want to put certain data points, I can do that, and I can also create a template around those things. Now, the fifth and one of the most interesting feature here is that we went ahead and have built test templates based on gestational age, right? Wherein we understood that over a period of 38 to 40 weeks, like the duration of pregnancy, at different intervals, at different gestational age, right? The patient has to be administered on certain scans, certain tests, and those kind of things, right? And it is somewhat difficult for the doctor to clearly have a view on in which gestational week what all tests needs to be done, right? And that's where the software comes into a picture here, wherein we have created 5 test templates that will be by default available in the EMR, right? Just by clicking on this third or the second icon, we will be able to view those test templates, and easily on a click of a button, depending on the gestational week, the doctor can choose any of these tests, right? If the doctor wants to understand what are the tests under these test name, like first trimester 6 to 9 weeks, right? How they're supposed to do that is they can go to the custom templates option, and this is the basically what are the tests under these different gestational week headings, right? So for first trimester 17 to 13 weeks, antenatal profile, TSH, thalassemia screening, NT scan are some of the tests that needs to be done within this period, right? Obviously, once when the doctors are writing it on the fly, they can delete certain tests if they do not want the patient to take that. If they want to add something else, they can add that. But we wanted to help the doctor out by at least providing them a test template so that their work becomes a little more easier. The 6th update that we have brought in is that in the add investigation section, right, we have listed OBGY specific test, right? So there will be a separate heading called OBGY. Under that, these 7 tests that are very, very relevant for OBS gynae patients are under a common OBGY heading, right? So oral GTT, D-dimer, serum uric acid, serum albumin, pap smear, ANC and AMH, all these 5 tests, the doctors can easily write the values of all these tests, right? Once when the prescription is done, right? Once when the doctor has put all the values, now this is how prescription will look like. Right on the prescription, the patient's name along with the blood group comes, right? So even though the patient is walking in for a follow-up and the doctor sees the prescription, they get this data point that whether the patient is a high-risk patient or not, right? Similarly, the LMP and EDD values, once when they pick it from the date picker, they automatically go on the printout, right? Again, one of the pain point was that the doctor somehow have customized fields wherein they were able to put LMP and EDD values, but in the follow-up visit of the patient, those LMP and EDD values were not retained, right? Again, this is something that we have solved now, right? So once when the LMP and EDD dates are filled, they will be retained in follow-up visits of the patient unless and until the pregnancy is over and the doctor wishes to clear those dates, right? Once when we have entered any values, D-dimer or serum uric acid, we have entered the values, those values will also go on the prescription. So doctor do not need to worry about it. Again, USG finding, we can create templates, one single liner. I want to put some detail of the USG scan that was done, a single live intrauterine fetus corresponding to 8 weeks, 1 day in cephalic present. So like this, I can use it. I can create a template around it so that it's just a matter for me to change these weeks, right? And then basically this is how the prescription will look like, right? So additionally, what we have done is, like a lot of doctors, they are interested in taking detailed case history of the patient, right? And that's where what we have done is we have gone ahead and provided these Gynaec and fertility case sheets by default. So summing up, these are some of the 6-7 updates that we have tried to bring in on the EMR side. Now what we can do is we can specifically ask our front desk to start capturing the blood group of the patient as well, right? So that blood groups get captured, and while I as a doctor am writing prescription, that I can quickly have a check that whether the blood group is not Rh negative, right? Similarly, LMP, EDD dates are there. EDD date gets calculated automatically. EDD, LMP dates will be retained in follow-up visits of the patient, right? That means doctor does not have to enter those dates again and again. A dedicated field with the functionality to create templates is what we have done for USG finding, right? A gestational week-wise test template is something that we have bring in, right? And then there are Gynae specific tests that are added under OBGY heading in add investigation. Right. So under a single heading, some of the most important tests for my own practice, those tests will be visible to gynecologists, right? And then we do have a Gynae and fertility case sheet, which will be helpful for taking the detailed history of a patient.